Captain Daeho Kim was drinking his morning coffee when the entire Earth Defense Force went silent. Every communication channel, every radar screen, every satellite feed suddenly stopped working. Then, just as quickly, everything came back online, with a message that would change humanity forever. The transmission appeared on every screen across the planet at exactly the same time. It showed a tall, thin creature with blue skin and 4 arms standing in what looked like a grand hall made of crystal and light. When it spoke, the words somehow translated perfectly into every human language. "Greetings, primitive inhabitants of the 3rd planet in the Sol system," the creature said with a voice that sounded bored. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Axiom Collective, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have detected your recent attempts at faster-than-light communication. While these attempts are crude and barely functional, they indicate that your species may be ready to learn about the greater universe." Daeho nearly dropped his coffee cup. Faster-than-light communication? He quickly checked the reports from last week. Dr. Youngmi Park's team had been working on some kind of quantum communication experiment, but they had only managed to send a simple signal to the edge of the solar system. The alien continued speaking. "The Galactic Council governs 847 advanced civilizations across this galaxy. We maintain peace, order, and progress for all worthy species. Your species, while showing some promise, is clearly in its infant stages of development. You lack proper technology, your social structures are chaotic, and your understanding of the universe is limited." Admiral Taejun Lee burst into Daeho's office just as the message continued. "Are you seeing this?" Lee asked, his face pale. "The entire planet is seeing this," Daeho replied, pointing at his screen. Ambassador Veltar's image seemed to look directly at them through the screen. "If your species wishes to join the galactic community, you must prove your worth. You will be granted one opportunity to present yourselves to the Council. A representative group may travel to our central station at Nexus Prime. There, you will undergo evaluation to determine if humanity deserves even the lowest tier of membership." The alien's expression became even more condescending. "Do not mistake this for an honor. Many species receive this invitation. Few prove themselves worthy of our guidance. Your primitive nature suggests you will likely fail, but the Council believes in giving every species a chance to better themselves under our wisdom." Dr. Youngmi Park ran into the office holding a tablet covered in data. "The signal!" she gasped, catching her breath. "It came from outside our galaxy and then somehow bounced off our quantum experiment. They've been watching us." "How long?" Lee asked. "I don't know," Youngmi replied, studying her tablet. "But look at this. The technology they use to hack every system on Earth simultaneously? It's impossible. No one should be able to override every different type of technology we use all at once." The alien ambassador was still speaking. "You have 7 of your planetary rotations to decide. If you choose to accept this opportunity, you will send no more than 8 representatives. They will travel aboard one of your primitive vessels to the coordinates we are now transmitting. Any attempt to bring weapons or military technology will result in immediate destruction." Veltar paused and for the first time seemed to smile. It was not a pleasant expression. "We have observed your species' tendency toward violence and chaos. This will be your only chance to prove you are capable of civilization. Do not disappoint us, though we expect you will." The transmission ended, leaving the 3 humans staring at blank screens. "Well," said Admiral Lee after a long silence, "that was insulting." "Deliberately so," Dr. Park said, scrolling through her data. "Look at this analysis of their transmission method. They didn't just hack our systems. They completely overwrote them temporarily. That level of technology is beyond anything we can imagine. Which means if they wanted to destroy us, they already would have," Daeho realized. Over the next few hours, emergency meetings were held in every major government building on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders all reached the same conclusion. Humanity had no choice but to respond to this invitation. Whether it was a trap or an opportunity, They had to find out. Dr. Park spent those first hours analyzing every second of the transmission. What she found troubled her. The ambassador mentioned 847 civilizations, she told the emergency council. But look at the background of his transmission. That hall, those symbols, even the way he spoke, it all follows very specific patterns. Almost like everything was designed to look the same. Engineer Sora Cho, who had been quietly working at her computer, suddenly looked up. I've been analyzing the override they used on our systems. It's advanced, yes, but it's also standardized. Like they have one method they use for everything. Our systems are all different programming languages, different hardware, different security methods. They shouldn't have been able to hack all of them the same way. What are you saying? Admiral Lee asked. I'm saying their technology might be advanced, but it's not flexible, Sora replied. It's like they have one very powerful tool that works the same way every time. Young Mai nodded slowly. And if every civilization in their council uses the, same technology, then none of them would develop alternatives, Daeho finished. They'd all be dependent on the same systems. Admiral Lee made the decision that would define humanity's future. We're going. But we're not going as beggars hoping for scraps. We're going as humans, with human technology and human ideas. If they don't like that, then maybe their council isn't something we want to join anyway. The selection process for Earth's representatives took 3 days. They chose people not for their ability to impress aliens, but for their ability to think like humans. Captain Daeho Kim would command their ship. Dr. Youngmai Park would handle scientific analysis. Admiral Taejun Lee would lead the diplomatic mission. Engineer Sora Cho would manage their technology. They added Dr. Jin Woo Nam, an anthropologist who specialized in understanding different cultures, and communications specialist Ha Yun Song, who could speak 12 human languages and understand dozens more. Military strategist Kyung Min Bai joined to assess any threats, and data analyst Woo Jin Han would help process whatever information they gathered. As Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission prepared to launch aboard the ship Indomitable, Spirit, one thing became clear to everyone involved. The Galactic Council expected humans to fail. They expected humanity to come begging for help and guidance. They were about to be very surprised. The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 weeks using humanity's fastest ship. The Indomitable Spirit was not the most advanced vessel in human history, but it was reliable, and more importantly, it was completely human-designed. Every system, every piece of technology, every line of code had been created by human minds working human problems in human ways. Dr. Young-Mi Park spent most of the journey studying the data they had gathered about the Galactic Council. What she found made her increasingly uncomfortable. Look at this, she told Captain Daeho Kim as they reviewed intelligence reports. Every piece of information we can find about Council species shows the same patterns. They all discovered faster-than-light travel at almost exactly the same point in their development. They all develop the same basic government structures. They all use virtually identical technology. That's impossible, Daeho replied. 847. Different species, evolving on different worlds, under different conditions. They should be completely different from each other. Exactly, Young-Mi said. Either this is the most incredible coincidence in the history of the universe, or something else is going on. Engineer Sora Cho had been modifying their ship's systems during the journey. I've been thinking about what happened when they took over our communications, she said. They were able to override everything, but they did it the same way for every system. That tells me they expect all technology to work the same way. What did you do? Admiral Taejun Lee asked, joining the conversation. I made our systems more human, Sora smiled. More chaotic, more unpredictable, more creative. If they try to take control of our ship the same way they took control of Earth's communications, they're going to get a surprise. When Nexus Prime finally appeared on their screens, even the humans had to admit it was impressive. The massive Space station orbited a neutron star, using the incredible gravitational forces to power systems that boggled the human mind. The station itself was larger than Earth's moon and seemed to be made entirely of the same crystal and light materials they had seen in Ambassador Veltar's transmission. "Incoming transmission," communications specialist Ha Un-song announced. A new alien appeared on their screen, smaller than Ambassador Veltar, but with the same blue skin and 4 arms. This one looked younger and spoke with barely concealed boredom. "Primitive vessel from Sol 3. I am Zilmoth of the hegemony species. I have been assigned as your cultural liaison during your evaluation period. Follow my directions exactly, or you will be destroyed. Dock at primitive species port 77 Alpha. You will be escorted to appropriate quarters." The transmission ended before any of the humans could respond. "Friendly," muttered Daeho. "Notice how he called our planet Sol 3? Dr. Jinwoo Nam pointed out. "Not Earth, not by any name we use for ourselves, just a catalog number." As they docked, at the specified port, the humans got their first close look at other species in the Council. Through the docking bay windows, they could see dozens of different alien species working together. But as data analyst Woo Jin Han observed, working together was not quite accurate. "Look at how they move," Woo Jin said, pointing out the window. "Everything is hierarchical. The blue-skinned ones give orders. The red ones follow those orders and give different orders to the green ones. The small purple ones don't seem to talk to anyone except other purple ones. It's like a caste system." When they finally disembarked, Zilmoth was waiting with what appeared to be a security escort. "Primitives," he said without any greeting. "You will follow me to your assigned quarters. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anyone without permission. Do not attempt to access any technology beyond your assigned level." The walk through Nexus Prime was both amazing and troubling. The technology was clearly far beyond anything humans had developed, but as engineer Sora Cho quietly observed to Captain Daeho, everything looks the same. Every door, every corridor, every control panel, it's like they have one template for everything. Dr. Jinwoo Nam was busy observing the other species they passed. What he saw confirmed Young Mi's analysis. Every species seemed to dress the same way, use the same tools, and follow the same behavioral patterns. The only differences were physical: skin color, number of arms, height, and similar variations. Their quarters were clean, functional, and insulting. The rooms were clearly designed for primitive species, with basic furniture and simple controls. A sign on the wall explained the rules. No unauthorized communication with other species, no access to council databases, no use of technology above their assigned level. Assigned level? Hawan Song read the sign with disgust. "What are we, children?" "That's exactly what they think we are," Admiral Lee replied. "The question is why?" That evening, Zilmoth returned with their cultural assessment schedule. He explained with obvious contempt that they would undergo a series of tests to determine humanity's intellectual capacity, technological understanding, and social development level. "Most primitive species fail these assessments," Zilmoth said with satisfaction. "Those that pass are granted the privilege of joining the council at an appropriate level. Those that fail," he shrugged, "are given guidance until they improve, or are reclassified as unsuitable for council membership." "What happens to species that are unsuitable?" Dr. Park asked innocently. Zilmoth's expression became even more condescending. "They receive council protection and guidance until they develop enough to try again. It can take thousands of your DOS years, but the council is patient. We help all species reach their proper place in galactic civilization." After Zilmoth left, the humans gathered in Admiral Lee's quarters to discuss what they had learned. "Did you notice how he avoided answering Young Mi's question?" Captain Daeho observed. "I noticed something else," Engineer Sora said. "When I was looking at their door controls, I realized something. This technology isn't more advanced than ours. It's just more standardized. They've taken one approach to every problem and made it work on a massive scale. But our technology is more flexible. Flexible how? Admiral Lee asked. Well, for example, their doors all open the same way using the same sensor technology. But what if you don't have the right biological signature? What if their sensors break? They'd be stuck. Our doors have mechanical backups, electronic overrides, manual controls, and emergency systems. Theirs just work one way. Dr. Jinwoo Nam had been quiet during this discussion, but now he spoke up. I think I'm beginning to understand what's happening here. This isn't really a council of equal species. It's a hierarchy designed to keep everyone in their assigned place. The question is, what happens to species that don't want to stay in their assigned place? I guess we're about to find out, Admiral Lee replied. Over the next several days, the humans were put through a series of tests designed to measure their capabilities. The tests were clearly meant to prove human inferiority, but the humans approached them differently than expected. Instead of trying to impress their testers, they asked questions. Instead of accepting the test parameters, they suggested improvements. Instead of being intimidated by superior council technology, they wanted to understand how it worked. This did not make their evaluators happy. Zilmoth became increasingly frustrated with the humans' refusal to be properly impressed and intimidated. Other council species began to take notice of the strange primitives who acted like they belonged in galactic civilization. By the end of their first week on Nexus Prime, word of the unusual humans had spread throughout the station. Some council species were curious. Others were concerned, and a few were beginning to ask questions that hadn't been asked in a very long time. The humans were about to learn that questions could be very dangerous things in the Galactic Council. After 10 days of testing and evaluation, the humans were finally granted permission to observe an actual Galactic Council session. Zilmoth escorted them to a massive amphitheater where representatives from hundreds of species sat in carefully arranged sections. The seating arrangement itself told a story that made the humans uncomfortable. At the top of the amphitheater sat the Prime Council, 12 species that appeared to make all the important decisions. Below them were arranged the Advisory Council, perhaps 50 species that were allowed to speak but clearly had limited influence. Further down were the Observer Council, hundreds of species that could watch but rarely spoke. At the very bottom were the Developing Council, species that were present but seemed to have no voice at all. Your species, if accepted, would begin in the Developing Council, Zilmoth explained with obvious pleasure. After several hundred of your years, you might advance to observer status if you prove worthy. Dr. Youngmi Park studied the arrangement carefully. How does a species advance from one level to another? She asked. Through demonstration of increased technological sophistication and cultural development, Zilmoth replied. The Council measures progress using standardized metrics. Species that achieve higher scores on our evaluation systems earn the privilege of advancement. Captain Daeho Kim noticed something else. Those evaluation systems. Who designed them? Zilmoth looked at him as if the question was stupid. The Prime Council, of course. They are the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their wisdom guides all of galactic civilization. The session itself was unlike anything the humans had expected. Rather than debate or discussion, it was more like a series of reports. Each species that was allowed to speak gave updates on their technological development, population growth, resource production, and compliance with council standards. Every report followed exactly the same format, used the same measurements, and reached conclusions that fit predetermined patterns. Dr. Jinwoo Nam, the anthropologist, found this fascinating and horrifying. It's like they've reduced the complexity of entire civilizations down to a simple checklist. He whispered to communications specialist Ha-Un Song. Look at the language they use, Ha-Un replied quietly. Every species uses the same phrases, the same concepts, even the same sentence. structures when they report. It's like they're all reading from the same script. Military strategist Kyung-min Bae was watching the body language of the various representatives. What he saw troubled him. "The lower-tier species aren't just respectful," he murmured to engineer So-Ra Cho. "They're afraid. Watch how they move when the Prime Council members look at them." During a recess period, the humans were allowed to move around the amphitheater and interact with other species. This turned out to be more revealing than the formal session itself. Admiral Taejun Lee approached a representative from one of the Observer Council species, a tall, thin being with gray skin and large eyes. "I'm Admiral Lee from the human delegation. May I ask you about your species' experience with the Council?" The being looked around nervously before responding. "I am Rindar of the Kethmori. We have been council members for 3,000 standard cycles." He paused, glancing toward the Prime Council section. "We are grateful for the Council's guidance and protection." The words were correct, but Dr. Park, who was nearby, noticed that Rindar's hands were shaking slightly. "Your homeworld must be very different from ours," she said conversationally. "What was it like before joining the Council?" Rindar's large eyes grew even larger. "Before? That is, the Council helped us overcome our primitive past. We no longer think about such things. But surely you have historical records?" Young Mi pressed gently. "Historical records are maintained by the Council's Department of Cultural Development," Rindar replied quickly. "They ensure accuracy and proper perspective." Data analyst Woo Jin Han had been listening to this conversation while simultaneously observing other interactions around the amphitheater. He was beginning to see a pattern that chilled him. "Admiral," Woo Jin said quietly as they walked to another section, "I've been counting. Do you know how many species have mentioned their homeworlds, their original cultures, or their pre-council history?" "How many?" Lee asked. "Zero. Not one species has voluntarily mentioned anything about their civilization before joining the Council, and when asked directly, they all give the same type of non-answer." Engineer So-Ra Cho had been studying the technology used throughout the amphitheater. "Look at these communication devices," she said, pointing to small devices that many representatives wore. "They're not just translators. Watch the lights." The humans observed that the devices flashed in synchronization whenever certain topics were discussed. When species talked about council policies, the lights were steady. When they mentioned their own ideas or experiences, the lights flickered. "Those aren't just translators," So-Ra realized. "They're monitors. The council is tracking every conversation in real time." Captain Dae-ho Kim had made his way to the developing council section, where the newest and supposedly most primitive species sat. What he found there was perhaps most disturbing of all. A representative from a species that had joined the council only 50 years earlier was explaining their progress to a Prime Council observer. "Our population growth has been stabilized, according to council recommendations," the representative reported. "Our technological development follows approved research pathways. Our cultural practices have been modified to align with galactic standards." The Prime Council observer nodded approvingly. "Excellent progress. Your species shows great potential for advancement. Continue following Council guidance, and you may achieve observer status within 200 cycles." Dae-ho waited until the observer moved on, then approached the representative. "I'm Captain Kim from the human delegation. Your species seems to have adapted well to council membership." The representative, a being with green skin and multiple arms, smiled with what appeared to be genuine happiness. "Oh yes, the council has been wonderful for us. Before joining, our people were so chaotic and unpredictable. We wasted enormous amounts of time and resources on different approaches to the same problems. Now everything is efficient and organized." "Different approaches?" Dae-ho asked. "Oh yes, it was terrible," the representative continued. "Some of our cities use different architectural styles. Some regions develop different technologies. Some communities even had different cultural practices. The council helped us understand that such diversity was inefficient and potentially dangerous. Dangerous how? Well, when everyone does things differently, you can't predict outcomes or maintain stability. The council's standardized approaches ensure that all problems have proven solutions. It's much better this way. When the humans regrouped after the recess, they shared their observations. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. It's not just a government, Admiral Lee concluded. It's a system designed to eliminate diversity and independence. The question is why, Dr. Park said. What's the point of creating a galaxy full of identical civilizations? Control, military strategist Kyungmin Bae said simply. If every species uses the same technology, follows the same social patterns, and thinks the same way, then they're all predictable and manageable. But what happened to the species that didn't want to be managed? Dr. Nam asked. That question hung in the air as the session resumed. The humans spent the rest of the day watching and listening, but now they knew what to look for. They saw the fear in the eyes of lower-tier species. They noticed how quickly conversations ended when certain topics arose. They observed the way the Prime Council members watched everything, with the calm confidence of beings who knew they were in complete control. By the end of the session, the humans had learned something that chilled them to the bone. The Galactic Council wasn't a council at all. It was a machine designed to process civilizations and turn them into interchangeable parts, and tomorrow, it would be humanity's turn to be processed. The day of humanity's formal presentation arrived with the artificial dawn that marked time aboard Nexus Prime. The humans had spent the previous night preparing something that no species had ever brought to the Galactic Council, the complete, unedited history of human technological and cultural development. Zilmoth arrived at their quarters early, clearly expecting to escort a group of nervous primitives to their inevitable humiliation. Instead, he found 8 humans who seemed oddly calm and confident. Today, you will present your species' achievements to the evaluation committee, Zilmoth announced with his usual condescension. You have been allocated 15 standard time units to demonstrate why humanity deserves even the lowest level of council membership. Most primitive species use this time to beg for guidance and assistance. We'll try something different, Admiral Taejon Lee replied pleasantly. The presentation chamber was smaller than the main amphitheater, but still impressive. 50 representatives from various council species sat in judgment, with the 12 Prime Council members occupying the highest tier. Ambassador Veltar, who had first contacted Earth, sat in the center with an expression of bored expectation. Begin your presentation, Veltar commanded. Admiral Lee stepped forward, but instead of the humble speech everyone expected, he began with something unprecedented. Honored representatives, we come before you not as supplicants seeking your approval, but as fellow sapient beings offering to share our knowledge and experience. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several Prime Council members exchanged glances. This was not how primitive species were supposed to behave. We have studied your council's achievements, Lee continued, and we are impressed by the peace and stability you have maintained across the galaxy. However, we believe that humanity can contribute something valuable to this civilization. The perspective of a species that has chosen diversity over uniformity. Dr. Young-Mi Park stepped forward. With a holographic display that engineer Sora Cho had prepared using their ship's systems. This is the complete technological development history of our species, she announced. What appeared in the hologram was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Instead of a neat linear progression from primitive to advanced, human technological development looked like an explosion of creativity. Dozens of different approaches to the same problems, technologies that developed in parallel, and innovations that came from unexpected combinations of existing ideas. As you can see, Dr. Park explained, Humans approached technological development differently than your member species. Instead of following a single optimal path, we pursued multiple paths simultaneously. This led to redundancy, inefficiency, and what you would probably call chaos. Council members nodded, confirming their assumption that humanity was indeed primitive and disorganized. However, Park continued with a smile, this approach also led to breakthrough innovations that single-path development could never achieve. Let me show you some examples. The holographic display shifted to show human-computer development. While your council species all developed identical quantum processing systems, humans created dozens of different computing approaches. Most were inferior to your quantum systems in raw power, but several had advantages your systems lack. Engineer So-Ra Cho activated a demonstration. Our ship's computers, for example, use what we call adaptive processing. Instead of following predetermined algorithms, they can rewrite their own programming in real time to handle unexpected situations. She showed how human computers had solved a navigation problem that council systems couldn't handle. Your quantum processors are incredibly powerful when dealing with known variables, but they struggle with true unknowns. Our computers are designed to be creative, not just powerful. The council representatives were beginning to look uncomfortable. Prime Council member Quinn Dal spoke up. Interesting, but ultimately irrelevant. Raw creativity without guidance leads to chaos and conflict. Our standardized systems prevent the wars and disasters that primitive species inflict upon themselves. Dr. Jin-Woo Nam stepped forward. That's exactly what we wanted to discuss. This display shows humanity's complete social and cultural development. The hologram now showed something that shocked the council. Human diversity. Thousands of different cultures, languages, governments, and social systems, all existing on the same planet and often influencing each other. As you can see, humans never developed a single unified civilization. Instead, we maintained thousands of different approaches to social organization. This led to conflicts, yes, but it also led to innovations in cooperation, diplomacy, and problem-solving that might be useful to the galactic community. Useful how? Demanded another Prime Council member. Communications specialist Ha-Yoon Song took over the presentation. Human cultures developed different ways of thinking about the same problems. When faced with a challenge that one culture couldn't solve, we could often find another culture that had already developed a solution. She showed examples of how human cultures had shared knowledge, adapted technologies, and learned from each other's mistakes. Most importantly, we learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Different perspectives help us find solutions that no single perspective could discover. Military strategist Kyung-Min Bae presented humanity's approach to conflict resolution. Humans did fight wars, but we also developed sophisticated methods for preventing conflicts and negotiating peaceful solutions. We learned that forcing everyone to think the same way doesn't eliminate conflict. It just makes conflicts more devastating when they do occur. Data analyst Woo Jin-Han showed statistical analyses that made the council increasingly uncomfortable. Human societies that maintained diversity were more stable, more innovative, and more adaptable than those that enforced uniformity. Our data suggests that diversity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be cultivated. The final part of the presentation was delivered by Captain Dae-Ho Kim. We know that our approach seems chaotic and inefficient compared to your achievements, but we would like to propose an experiment. The chamber fell silent. Allow humanity to maintain our diversity while contributing to galactic civilization. Let us serve as a testing ground for new approaches and alternative solutions. If our methods prove valuable, they could benefit all council species. If they prove harmful, you can easily contain or eliminate us. Ambassador Veltar's expression had changed from boredom to concern. You are proposing that the Council allow an uncontrolled variable into our carefully balanced civilization? We're proposing that the Council consider the possibility that Perfect balance might not be the highest goal, Admiral Lee replied. Growth, innovation, and adaptation might be more valuable than stability and control. Prime Council member Quindal stood up, his blue skin darkening with what appeared to be anger. Your proposal is not just rejected, it is dangerous. You suggest abandoning the principles that have maintained galactic peace for over 1 million cycles. You propose chaos over order, conflict over harmony, unpredictability over stability. We propose choice over compulsion, Dr. Park replied quietly. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members seemed intrigued by the human presentation, while others appeared horrified. The Prime Council members were clearly agitated, speaking rapidly among themselves in a language the human translators couldn't decipher. Finally, Ambassador Veltar called for order. The Evaluation Committee will deliberate on humanity's unusual presentation. You will be informed of our decision within 3 standard cycles. As the humans were escorted back to their quarters, they could hear heated discussions breaking out throughout the chamber. Their presentation had accomplished something unprecedented. It had caused the Galactic Council to question its own fundamental assumptions. Zilmoth was unusually quiet during the walk back. Finally, he spoke. What you did in there. No species has ever done anything like that before. We know, Admiral Lee replied. The Council will not accept your proposal, Zilmoth continued. They cannot. It threatens everything they have built. We know that too, Dr. Park said. Then why did you do it? Captain Daeho Kim answered for the group. Because someone needed to ask the questions that no one has been allowed to ask. Someone needed to show that there are alternatives to the Council's way. Even if we fail, maybe others will remember that choice is possible. Zilmoth stopped walking and stared at the humans. For the first time since they had met him, his expression showed something other than condescension. It showed fear. You don't understand, he whispered. The Council doesn't just reject species that won't conform. The Council makes sure they never get the chance to spread their ideas to others. The humans had known their presentation would probably end in rejection. Now they were beginning to realize it might end in something much worse. The humans spent the next day in their quarters, officially waiting for the Council's decision. Unofficially, they were putting together the pieces of a puzzle that painted an increasingly horrifying picture of galactic civilization. Communications. Specialist Ha Yun Song had been analyzing every conversation she had recorded during their stay on Nexus Prime. Listen to this, she told the others, playing back a conversation between 2 council representatives. Notice how they talk about their homeworlds. The recording played a typical exchange where both species described their planets using identical terminology, identical measurements, and identical social structures. But Ha-Un had isolated something else in the background, subtle variations in vocal patterns that suggested the speakers were translating concepts that didn't quite match the words they were using. They're not describing their actual worlds, Ha-Yun realized. They're describing template worlds that have been imposed over their actual cultures. Dr. Jinwoo Nam had made an even more disturbing discovery. I've been comparing the linguistic patterns of different council species. Every language uses the same basic grammatical structures, the same conceptual frameworks, and the same methods of organizing ideas. That's impossible for naturally evolved languages. Unless they're not natural anymore, data analyst Wu Jin Han added grimly. I've been running statistical analyses on everything we've observed. The probability of 847 different species independently developing such similar technologies, social structures, and thought patterns is essentially 0. Engineer Sora Cho had spent her time studying the technology they had observed throughout Nexus Prime. I think I understand how they did it, she said. Remember those communication devices that everyone wears? They're not just translators and monitors, they're neural interfaces. She showed the others her analysis. The devices can monitor thoughts, but I think they can also influence them. Over time, they could gradually reshape how people think, what they consider important, even how they solve problems. Captain Dae-ho Kim felt a chill as the implications became clear. You're saying the Council has been gradually rewriting the minds of entire civilizations? Not rewriting, Dr. Young-mi Park corrected. Optimizing. From their perspective, they're probably eliminating inefficient thought patterns and replacing them with proven successful ones. Admiral Tae-jun Lee had been quiet during this discussion, but now he spoke up. That explains something that's been bothering me. Zilmoth mentioned that species which don't conform don't just get rejected, they get prevented from spreading their ideas. But we haven't seen any evidence of the Council using military force. Because they don't need to, military strategist Kyung-min Bae realized. If they can control how people think, they can make entire civilizations voluntarily give up their independence. The humans were interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Rindar, the nervous Keth Mori representative they had met during the council session, appeared at their door. But this time, he wasn't wearing his communication device. I cannot stay long, Rindar said, glancing around nervously. What you did in the presentation, it reminded me of something I had forgotten. What do you mean? Dr. Park asked gently. My people before the council? We were different. We thought differently. We had art, music that wasn't standardized, stories that weren't approved, technologies that solved problems in ways the council doesn't permit. Rindar's large eyes filled with what looked like tears. I remember fragments, pieces that the optimization process couldn't completely erase. My people were explorers, inventors, dreamers. We looked at the stars and wondered what we might find there. Now we look at the stars and see only council territories with assigned resource quotas. How many others remember? Admiral Lee asked. More than the council knows, Rindar replied. The optimization process works slowly, over generations. Those of us who lived before it was completed. We remember fragments. We just learned not to speak of them. What happened to species that resisted the optimization? Dr. Nam asked. Rindar's expression became haunted. There was a species called the Velkari. They were incredible artists and philosophers. When the council tried to optimize them, they refused. They said their chaotic, inefficient ways of thinking were more valuable than council efficiency. What happened to them? The council declared them a threat to galactic stability. Other council species were convinced that the Velkari's influence could undo millions of cycles of progress. The Velkari homeworld was quarantined. Anyone who tried to leave was stopped. Anyone who tried to contact them was blocked. Eventually, the Velkari stopped trying to communicate with the outside galaxy. They're still alive? Captain Kim asked. As far as I know, but they're completely isolated, cut off from all galactic civilization. It's a kind of prison disguised as protection. Rindar stood to leave. The Council will offer you a choice. Accept optimization and join galactic civilization or face quarantine. But there might be a third option. What option? Some of us have been waiting for a species like yours, a species that could remind the galaxy what we've lost. If you could somehow spread your ideas before the Council stops you. Rindar left without finishing the sentence, but his meaning was clear. The humans spent the rest of the day preparing for what they now knew was coming. Engineer So-Ra Cho worked on modifications to their ship's communication systems. Communications. Specialist Ha-Yun Song prepared a comprehensive broadcast that would summarize everything they had learned about the Council's true nature. Data analyst Woo Jin-han compiled evidence of the Council's mental manipulation programs. When Ambassador Veltar finally summoned them the next day, the humans were ready. The meeting took place in a smaller chamber with only the 12 Prime. Council members present. The atmosphere was tense, and Veltar's usual condescension had been replaced by something that looked like concern. The Evaluation Committee has reached a decision regarding humanity's application for Council membership, Veltar announced. Your presentation was unprecedented. It demonstrated capabilities that could be valuable to galactic civilization. Admiral Lee waited for the other shoe to drop. However, Veltar continued, your species' chaotic nature and resistance to standardization presents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Therefore, the Council offers you two options. Prime Council member Quinn Dal stood up. Option 1. Humanity accepts Council guidance and undergoes the standard optimization process. Your species will be gradually integrated into galactic civilization over the next several thousand cycles. Your chaotic tendencies will be replaced with proven, efficient approaches. You will become productive members of the galactic community. Option 2? Admiral Lee asked, though he already knew. Option 2. Humanity rejects Council membership and returns to your homeworld. Earth will be designated a protected system under Council oversight. No human vessel will be permitted to leave your solar system. No outside species will be permitted to contact you. This protection will remain in place indefinitely. A prison, Dr. Park said quietly. A necessary safeguard, Veltar corrected. Your ideas, while interesting, are too dangerous to spread throughout galactic civilization. The stability and peace we have maintained for over 1 million cycles cannot be risked for the sake of primitive creativity. How long do we have to, decide? Captain Kim asked. You will give us your answer now, Quindal replied. There is no need for deliberation. The choice is simple. Join us and become civilized or remain isolated and primitive. Admiral Lee looked at his team. Each of them nodded slightly. They had already made their choice. We need to discuss this as a group, Lee said. Give us 1 hour. Very well, Veltar agreed. 1 hour. Then humanity chooses its future. As the humans were escorted back to their quarters, they knew that the next hour would determine not just humanity's fate, but possibly the fate of every species in the galaxy. The hour passed quickly. In their quarters, the humans made final preparations for what they all knew would be their last official act as Earth's representatives to the Galactic Council. Engineer So-Ra Cho completed her modifications to their ship's communication systems. Communications specialist Ha-Yun Song finalized the broadcast that would carry humanity's message across the galaxy. Data analyst Wu Jin Han encrypted their evidence using human algorithms that the Council would need time to break. When they returned to the Council chamber, the 12 Prime Council members were waiting with obvious impatience. Ambassador Veltar gestured for Admiral Tae-Jun Lee to speak. The human delegation has reached a decision, Lee announced. But before we give you our answer, we have something to say to the galaxy. That is not acceptable, Prime Council member Quindal interrupted. You will choose optimization or quarantine. There are no other options. Actually, there is a third option, Dr. Youngmi Park said calmly. Rejection. The Prime Council members exchanged alarmed glances. Rejection is not possible, Veltar said. All species must choose either Council membership or Council protection. There are no alternatives. You're wrong, Admiral Lee replied. There is always an alternative. It's called freedom. Captain Dae-Ho Kim stepped forward. By the authority granted to me by the people of Earth, I formally reject both Council membership and Council protection. Humanity claims the right to determine its own future, make its own mistakes, and find its own path among the stars. You cannot reject Council protection, Quindal said, his blue skin darkening with anger. Species that refuse our guidance become threats to galactic stability. They must be contained. Contained by what authority? Dr. Jinwoo Nam asked. By whose right do you decide the fate of entire civilizations? By the right of superior advancement and the responsibility of maintaining galactic peace, Veltar replied. Primitive species cannot be trusted with the power to influence others. Your chaos would undo millions of cycles of progress. Engineer So-Ra Cho quietly activated her modifications. Throughout Nexus Prime and across the galaxy, human technology began taking control of Council communication networks. It was not an attack. It was an override, using the same techniques the Council had used on Earth's systems, but improved, with human creativity and adaptability. Then let the galaxy judge for itself, communications specialist Ha Yun Song announced. Across every Council communication channel, on every world in galactic civilization, humanity's message began broadcasting. It was not a plea for help or a declaration of war. It was something far more dangerous: information. The broadcast showed everything the humans had learned about the Council's true nature. The evidence of mental optimization, the statistical impossibility of 847 species developing identically. The testimonies of beings like Rindar who remembered what their civilizations had been before Council guidance. The fate of species like the Velkari who had refused to conform. Most importantly, the broadcast offered an alternative. It showed human diversity, human creativity, human solutions to problems that the Council had never considered. It demonstrated that chaos and inefficiency could lead to innovations and discoveries that perfect order could never achieve. "You cannot do this," Veltar said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "The galaxy is not ready for such information. It will cause chaos, conflict, the collapse of everything we have built. Maybe," Admiral Lee admitted, "or maybe it will cause something better. Growth, innovation, the chance for every species to reach its full potential instead of its assigned role." Prime Council member Thisara stood up with what appeared to be rage. "Destroy them," she commanded. "Destroy their ship, their home world. Eliminate every trace of their contamination before it spreads." "With what?" Military strategist Kyung-Min Bae asked calmly. "Your weapons systems are as standardized as everything else. Our ship's defenses were designed by humans who never learned that there was only one right way to solve problems. Engineer Sora Cho's modifications had done more than take over the communication networks. They had also analyzed and neutralized the Council's standard defensive systems. Human technology, chaotic and unpredictable as it was, had proven adaptable, enough to handle threats that Council technology couldn't process. Besides, Dr. Park added, "It's too late. The information is already spreading. By now, millions of beings across the galaxy have heard humanity's message. They're learning that alternatives exist." The truth of her words became apparent as reports began flooding into the Council chamber. Species across the galaxy were asking questions that hadn't been asked in millennia. Some were demanding explanations from their Council representatives. Others were requesting direct communication with Earth. A few were already beginning to remove their neural interface devices. "This is disaster," Quindal said, his voice filled with despair. "You have doomed galactic civilization to chaos and conflict." "We've given galactic civilization a choice," Captain Kim corrected. "Something it hasn't had for 1,000,000 years." Veltar made one last attempt at control. "Even if some species choose chaos over order, the majority will remain, loyal to the Council. Your rebellion will be isolated and contained." "Will it?" Data analyst Wu Jinhan asked. "Because our analysis suggests that most species in the Council never chose your system voluntarily. They were gradually conditioned to accept it over generations. Now that they know conditioning is reversible, how many do you think will choose to remain?" The answer came faster than anyone expected. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species were requesting private communications with the human delegation. Within days, entire sectors of the galaxy were questioning Council authority. Within weeks, the first species began formally withdrawing from Council membership. The humans departed Nexus Prime not as failures or prisoners, but as catalysts for the largest transformation in galactic history. As the indomitable spirit headed back toward Earth, they monitored communications from across the galaxy. Species that had been silent for centuries were rediscovering their voices. Technologies that had been forbidden were being developed in secret. Art, music, literature, and philosophy were emerging from worlds that had been culturally sterile for millennia. "It won't be easy," Dr. Park observed as they watched reports of conflicts breaking out between species choosing freedom and those remaining loyal to the Council. "Change never is." "But it will be real," Admiral Lee replied. "For the first time in a million years, the galaxy has the chance to grow instead of just maintaining equilibrium." Captain Kim received a message from Earth as they approached the Teir solar system. Hundreds of species had sent diplomatic requests, scientific exchanges, and cultural missions. Some wanted to learn from human diversity. Others wanted to share the knowledge they had preserved in secret despite Council optimization. The Velkari, isolated for thousands of years, had sent a single message: "Thank you for reminding us that we are not alone." As Earth appeared on their screens, growing larger with each passing hour, the humans realized that their mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. They had not gained membership in the Galactic Council. Instead, they had begun the process of creating something entirely new, a galactic community based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed conformity. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of galactic freedom was about to begin, and it had all started with 8 humans who refused to believe that there was only one right way to live among the stars. Behind them, Nexus Prime continued to orbit its neutron star, still impressive, still powerful, but no longer the undisputed center of galactic civilization. The galaxy was becoming larger, more complex, more chaotic, and infinitely more interesting. Humanity had arrived at the Galactic Council as applicants seeking membership. They left as revolutionaries who had changed the galaxy forever. The Council had been right about one thing: human chaos was indeed dangerous to their perfect order. But they had been wrong about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. The galaxy was about to find out just how beautiful chaos could be.